Daftaboutcraft, the craft beer podcast.
Goodness me, these weeks go round quickly. We're here again. It's Daftaboutcraft, the craft beer podcast, episode number 61. With me, Dave D.
And me, Dave B.
Thank you very much for downloading us, streaming us, and finding us on your pod platform. What have we got this time, Dave?
I think as small breweries go, we've probably found one of our smallest, actually. Not necessarily by quantity, given how much he can produce, but St Botolph's Brewery, which I found at a farmer's market in Ipswich, are very much a two-man band, Alan and his partner Lindsay. It was a really interesting chat because it wasn't someone who's necessarily looking to get a tap room or expand rapidly, but instead what he is doing, and has been doing for a long, long time, is brewing very, very nice Belgian-style beers, which I didn't know existed only half an hour away. And he tells us all about how he's got into it and why he does it.
Yes, fascinating chat, and the beers are really good as well. So, yeah, chatting to Alan from St Botolph's. We've got the Brewer's Wife, with more tales from behind the scenes at Copper Beech Brew Co in Worcestershire. We've got Tried and Tested, where we talk about our favourite beers since our last episode, which will encompass a trip to Derbyshire for Dave, which he'll be telling us about.
We've also got Burwell Brewery, who fit in very nicely with St Botolph's because Ricky Dolphin, who is the brewer for Burwell, he very kindly dropped me some beers off at work. And again, this is another brewery operating on a smaller scale, but brewing traditional type beers and some different bits as well. And he drops us a little note to tell us all about what he's got in his locker.
And he must have the best name in craft beer, Ricky Dolphin.
It's brilliant, isn't it? I couldn't believe it when we started chatting to him on email.
I wonder if he does a sort of a DJ gig on the side or something. He should do with a name like that.
He pulled up and dropped me some beers off out the back of his Mercedes, which I hope he doesn't mind me saying. And I did sort of think, you know, this guy seems to be living in a very cool life.
Yeah, well, we can find out all about him a bit later on. But we will kick it off this time, as we always do, with one of our really favourite features, Brew to Me, where we try a beer from a brewery we haven't had before. And Dave, what have you got this time?
I have got the only beer that this brewery at the moment has in cans.
Oh, wow, okay. So yeah. Have they only made one beer, or have they only put one in can?
They have only put one in can. They have many beers, and they even have a tap room. But at the moment, they don't have that much in can. I'm talking about Libertalia Brewing Co., based in Leighton, down in London. The tap room opened last year, so it's all quite new, and the ethos is beer meeting music and sort of punk music and metal and things like that, which I'll get onto a bit more with this beer. But yeah, as I say, at the moment, the only beer which you can get in can from themselves, but you can go to the tap room and they've got many, many more beers to try, which I was very generously invited along to. And at some point, hopefully I'll get down there.
I don't know, you're getting all the invites these days. Big sharing bottles, invites, merch, a whole lot's coming your way.
If only I was in a position to take greater advantage. It will come. It will come. But the beer I've got is a London Porter, and it's in collaboration with a band that I must confess I'm not very familiar with at all, called Knuckle Dust. Knuckle Dust are the internet tells me they are a heavy hardcore band which have been going since 1996 with no changes to their lineup, which is quite impressive. And it's a collaboration with them. It's a London Porter, 5.28%.
That's very specific. I wonder if it really is,
isn't it?
With the ABVs, there's a certain tolerance that you are legally allowed to have. Now, 5.28 sounds like maybe it is exactly 5.28. Amazing if it is. I've got to say, when you said London Porter, the one I'm thinking of straight away is Anspach and Hobday's London Black, which I've had and quite a few times and really enjoyed it. I don't know whether you've had that.
Not sure I have. The one I was thinking of, which probably, having had a little sip of this, is nowhere near, was Fuller's London Black Cab, just because it'd be a London Porter. But this is very dry.
I remember the London Black being quite full and thick, a lot of body to it.
It's quite full. You know what this almost is a bit like? It reminds me a bit of a black IPA as well.
Okay.
There's a bit of maltiness. There's a lot of roastiness. It's a really roasty porter, this. Big flavour. Sort of not loads of different flavours, but the one big flavour it's got, this sort of dry, roasty hit, is big. not the worst thing. It might not be quite for everyone, I guess, because I would say this is actually a really traditional London porter.
It's amazing, isn't it? You say a porter, you think, right, it's going to taste like a porter, but actually within that banding, there's a lot of
subsets of it, isn't there? You can get this actually does taste like 5.28. Well, it tastes in that.
Yes, it tastes just like 5.28, doesn't it? Yes.
If I was to hazard a guess at this ABV, I'd say 5. Yeah, it comes through quite strong. I can tell I'm drinking something over 5. That's for sure. It's big, bold flavours, which I guess, without being not being unfortunately familiar at all with the work of Knuckle Dust, I suspect it might hit their type of music though. If it's sort of British hardcore and quite full on, this is full on. This is a big full on beer.
It's amazing, really, that we can still find breweries in the capital city of England that we haven't heard of before. Because you would kind of think, obviously London's big and there's 6-7 million people live there, but you kind of think we know all those craft breweries, but we're still finding them. I love that.
And you know what? I sort of almost, when I'm searching for breweries for this feature, I do disregard London a little bit because I always sort of think, oh, well, I'm sure we've done it to death. Like everyone knows everything in London now. You're never going to find a new one. And yet, it didn't take a load of digging, and then all of a sudden I sort of thought, oh, don't know this at all. And we're lucky enough to get some beers through the post normally. Shout out to Libertalia, who sent me one can, which is absolutely fine. I only need one can, but one can which arrived very neatly packaged behind my gate, and it was a really, really interesting take on getting it sent through Royal Mail, just seeing one can rolled up like it was. It survived the trip perfectly well. It was just really a genius way of doing it.
I thought you were going to say it was in a huge box, and when you undid it, this huge box, you thought, oh yeah, great, lots of beers, and there'd be one little can of beer sitting at the bottom.
No, it's one of those. I sort of got it and I sort of picked it up and was like, I know exactly what it's going to be. It's one can of beer. And I don't say it to make it sound mean spirited. It's not at all. I just thought it was a very ingenious way of sending one beer,
and a beer that you've enjoyed by the sounds of it.
Yeah, I'd be interested in trying it on keg. The thing I get of it is this is a big roasty beer, big flavour. If you like your porters to be, if you want that roasty coffee malty taste, the sort of quite traditional take on it, but big. This will do the job perfectly for you. Excellent.
Well, I'm not going to London. I'm not even going to England. I'm going to Wales, which seems to be somewhere we've dropped off quite a lot recently on this feature.
Yeah, you sort of started the ball rolling with this, and then I got involved in the act, and now you're going back again. Yeah,
I think the one we remember probably the most from our voyages to the Land of the Dragon is Dark Element and their big hazy pales.
It's that or Sobro Messer for me.
I saw lots of posts from the last bank holiday from on Instagram from them. It looked like people were having an amazing time camping there and drinking the beers at the tap room. I've got to get there. But anyway, the brewery I'm trying a beer from is called Macho Mango, and they're based in Aberdare in South Wales. Now, I didn't even come across the brewery actually on Instagram. I came across the guy who runs the brewery, Chris Williams, and I noticed there was a picture on his profile of some beer, and I thought, I don't recognise that. What is it? Had a look, and it was Macho Mango, and I thought, I wonder if he is Macho Mango. So I messaged him, found out that he is Macho Mango, started the dialogue with him, and he was keen to come on and send us some beers. So here we are.
Excellent.
Now, he's only made 3 beers, West Coast, Decker's Tropical IPA, and Mr. Moocher and Nipa, which is the one that I've got.
This is quite similar to Libertalia. We're now getting to the point where, the breweries we're talking about don't even have websites yet and things like that.
We're right at the start of another journey here, which is fantastic. There's no website, and they've got a Facebook presence.
It's just the same as Libertalia.
Yeah, I love it. You almost feel as though you're part of a journey, don't you, when you find a brewery so young?
100%.
Now, this can is lovely and bright with a black logo in the middle. I've got a can of Rude Boy as well, which is a similar design, but that one's sort of yellowy green. Tell you what's quite cool. It's got a little key on the back, which tells you what the colour is, what the nose is, and what the taste should be.
Okay.
So we're looking at a golden haze with a nose of passion fruit and pineapple and soft stone fruit to taste here on this New England IPA, which sounds about right, doesn't it?
Yeah. Does it tell you what the hops are?
I don't think it does, actually, but we've got Chris coming up in a bit to talk to you, so hopefully he'll enlighten us and tell us. Oh, I tell you what, I'd like to hazard a guess at what hops are in this.
Okay.
One that's very, very noticeable. Oh, I don't know whether I want to play this game again. I'd be amazed if that isn't Galaxy, he says.
Okay.
We shall see. But Wales is the place for big yellow beers, it seems.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because obviously sort of Polly's were doing this for years now, and it felt like they and Tiny Rebel until, Tiny Rebel branched to do what they do, but there wasn't really anything else, it felt like. And now all of a sudden there's, stiff competition.
Yeah, in actual fact, the one I've got lined up to do on our next episode is also from Wales, incredibly. Real hotbed. Anyway, this is good. A nice bitter hit to it, actually.
Looks a lovely colour. Your beers always do on camera, to be fair, but that does look a nice colour. Good head as well.
Lovely head, lovely colour, lovely body, lovely and soft. Maybe a bit more bitter than I would imagine, but that's fine. That's not a problem. Here's a question for you. Have you heard of the style Mountain IPA?
I have.
Well, you don't see many Mountain IPAs around, do you?
You don't.
The way I understand it, it's a bit of a mash-up between an East Coast and a West Coast, which made me think of this actually a little bit, because the bitterness makes me think of a West Coast, actually.
Okay, so it starts east, finishes west, essentially.
But no, that's good. That's really nice, actually. Let's have a listen to Chris, and he can hopefully tell us what is in there.
Hi guys, it's Chris here from Macho Mango Brewery. We're a small microbrewery based down in Aberdeen in South Wales. We opened up in December last year after around maybe a year and a half of setting the business up, ironing out any problems, which there were lots of. Yeah, we operate on a small 700-litre kit, and I suppose our main focus is producing modern, bold, hop-forward beers. We will eventually do other styles like stouts and lagers and seasonal beers, but at the moment we have three core beers, which are all kind of variations of IPAs. I've sent over two of our beers, Rude Boy, a West Coast IPA. This one's a nice crisp beer where I use mostly Pilsner malt and some Munich to give that nice kind of amber colour, and also adds some body to the beer. Yeah, Rude Boy is loaded with classic hops, Columbus and Chinook, with a nice dose of Nelson Sauvin in the background to kind of brighten it up with some fresh gooseberry notes. Kind of complements all the piney notes you get from the Chinook. The other beer I've sent over is Mr. Mucha, which is a New England IPA. This beer is like starting with a water profile for this beer. We added mostly calcium chloride to give a nice soft, full mouthfeel. Yeah, luckily down here in South Wales we have great water. It's really soft, so there's no need to like strip it back with reverse osmosis or anything. So yeah, so it's easier then to build the profile you need for the style of beer you're creating. Mr. Mucha's grain bill is mostly Golden Promise and a nice dose of wheat for that extra body, and also helps with head retention. It has a hefty dose of Idaho 7 hops in the Whirlpool. I absolutely love these hops. The aroma is amazing. Yeah, also these hops, they're really like a good choice to use in the Whirlpool, as they've got higher concentrations of beer-soluble compounds, which like can survive the heat of the Whirlpool. As for the yeast, we use a nice juicy variant, which has a kind of medium level of flocculation. So obviously this helps with good kind of haze stability and add into that soft kind of pillowy mouthfeel you want from a New England IPA. Yeah, for the most exciting part, the dry hop. We wanted to get those nice juicy tropical notes, so there's very large amounts of the big hitters, Citra, Galaxy and Nelson Sauvin. Yeah, so yeah, that's Mr. Mucha, guys. Thanks for having me and enjoy the beer. Cheers.
Well, thank you very much, Chris. You've answered a few questions in there like we were hoping, and how fantastic to hear I actually got it right with Galaxy. Amazing scenes. Yeah, that's really good. I'm really impressed with that. Like I say, this is only one of 3 beers that they've released, so they're very early into their journey. And as we know, and we found out over the years we've been doing this, brewers tinker again and again and again. And this beer, I imagine, is only going to get better as time goes on, and he brews it again, tweaks it, changes the kit, gets a bigger kit. Everything keeps changing all the time when you're really at the start of your journey. So yeah, it's a lot of promise there.
I was going to say, it sounds like it's starting from a fairly high base.
Well, exactly, yeah. This is a good, solid start. And like I say, tastes good, looks the business. Intrigued to try the West Coast now. A Rude Boy, which is chilling in the fridge. while we're talking about hops there, and as you heard, I did actually get Galaxy right, which I'm obviously very, very pleased about. We are basically, Dave, a couple of complete hop losers.
Well, we are, or you can say that we are 33% right.
Yeah,
But
wow,
it
we
feels-
correctly guessed Citra. If you don't know what we're talking about, on a few episodes ago, we had 3 mystery beers from Siren, which they released to the general public, and then you could enter a competition with what hops you thought were in each beer. We guessed individually. We both had the beers and made our guesses. We both agreed on hop A, which we thought was Citra, and the results have been revealed, and it was Citra. So the most popular hop in modern beer we can identify. Great.
Yes. So, if you think that podcasting and, getting your hops and everything is really difficult, yes, it is. But then actually, no, there's a lot more to it than that, as we subsequently proved by failing miserably on the next 2 beers.
The next one astounds me because we both agreed it was quite muted, didn't we?
We both went Mosaic, and I mean, this is
Back to after time now. Go on.
exactly. I was going to say it's after timing, isn't it? It's after timing or pocket talk. But as you say, the hop profile, I think, for both beers B and C, especially B, were quite muted. Whether that was the amount of hop going in or just what they wanted to create, and that's absolutely fair. It's brewers' prerogative.
I think there's a bit of trickery here, and they've underplayed the use of those hops in both beers, because B, which we guessed was Mosaic, was actually Nelson Sauvin, which is a very distinctive hop. Dave's an expert at identifying that, as regular listeners will know, so he should have got this. I'd like to think we can call that hop quite easily these days, but we just didn't guess it. We just had no idea it was that.
I agree with you, and yes, this is 100% after timing, podcaster trying to defend being incorrect, but Nelson Sauvin has a really distinctive winey grapey taste. I stand by the fact that beer did not taste like that at all.
And to me, it's a sweaty socks kind of dankness to it, which I also didn't get. In fact, on the last episode, I backtracked on Mosaic and said I thought it might be a British hop. But no, we were both completely wrong. And hop C, it turns out, was Sabro, which I think coconutty, pineapple-y, quite an easy one to identify. Off the top of our heads there, we know what it should smell and taste like. Didn't get any of that.
I will say, in Siren's defence, because it feels like we're bagging on them unfairly, we were both very agreeable that it was very fruity. And I think you can do that with Sabro, but because we didn't get coconut, that was why I never would have picked it. I do think, when you said pineapple there, I do think when we were talking, there was sort of that element to it. But
maybe the pineapple, yeah.
But we both were thinking, you were thinking, I think you went Nectaron, didn't you? And I went Azaka.
I said Nectaron, and then on the last episode, I revised it to Brewaka. I suppose we got the fruitiness a little bit right, but I'm amazed because, Sabro for me is all coconut and pineapple. That coconutty nose, which we didn't get at all. So if you were tuning into the podcast for some expert knowledge and advice, you've come to the wrong place, and it's official.
So I was at a food and drink market and arts and crafts market in Ipswich, I didn't even know existed, about a month ago. And the first tent I saw was St Botolph's brewery tent. So, of course, I had to go have a look, met Alan, and found out that there is St Botolph's brewery in Colchester, which is not very far at all from me in Ipswich. And he's been brewing Belgian-style beers for 10 years, which I never ever knew about. Evening, Alan.
Good evening. Good evening, gents.
Hi, how you doing, Alan? This is ironic, really, because Dave loves Belgian beers, and you're located not far away from him, and he'd never heard of you. So
half an hour away, and just goes to show what's under your nose, and you don't know about it. And lo and behold, here we are.
Yeah, we are very much under the radar. We don't.
Well,
we mainly do farmers markets and things like that.
Let's help shine a bit of a light on you then.
Okay, brilliant.
How long have you been going?
Actually registered in 2016. We've been out in the market since about then, 2017, I think was our first one. And I've been brewing for a number of years before then as well, but officially since 2017, basically.
So is this very much a sideline for you, or something you do all the time? Or
I wish it was something I did all the time, but unfortunately, it probably wouldn't be enough to pay the bills. It is a sideline. I don't produce enough to make it a full-time job at the moment. I mean, it was a way out of my industry I'm in at the moment. I'm in the building trade. As I've got older, I thought body's saying no, so I was sort of looking for something to transition into as a full-time job.
And why Belgian beers?
I'm not a great fan of warmer beers. I like them nice and cold, and I like a bit of flavour with them. And obviously, a lot of the beer here that's cold is lager. And it was a trip to Bruges with me and Lindsay, my other half, who also is part of the team. It was a trip to Bruges in 2010, and I sort of had a bit of a revelation about it, really. You thought, so many different styles and flavours, and basically they're all cold as well, which sort of helped.
I knew there was going to be a trip to Belgium involved in this, and that's where it all started. It's often the way, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I did. I had there was Hoegaarden, there was Left. There wasn't really a great deal on the shelves at the time in England. You had to go to specialist beer shops.
Yep.
Whereas now you can go to Tesco's, Sainsbury's, and get a good variety of Belgian beers. So yeah, that's basically where it started.
And as you say, you go for all styles. You're not sort of fully focused on like all the triples and the quads and the things up a real strong end. You'll sort of go from low to high.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they sort of generalise. I mean, from 4.9 is the lowest I do, and 10% is the highest. The tax dictates a lot of it, because obviously the higher the alcohol volume, the more tax you pay on it. So it's difficult because I think there's a price limit for what people are prepared to pay for a single bottle of 330 ml. And if I brew 8-9% all the time and just sold that, I probably wouldn't sell as many, obviously because they cost more than the tax.
You got the right idea. We've already opened ours. We're one step ahead of you.
Oh, you're ahead of me. Oh, okay.
So obviously you say you did it, you're doing it as a sideline and everything. What sort of size kit are we talking here to be able to put the beers together?
I've got a 400 litre kit, which is sort of 2 barrels, basically. So yeah, I mean, I can produce probably about 600 bottles each brew.
And how often are you?
Sort of enough.
And how often are you brewing?
It's probably depends really. I mean, during the winter months, obviously not as much. I try and brew up over the winter and get ready for the summer. But once it's sort of summer kicks in, probably twice a month, something like that.
Yeah, I suppose if you say you're doing all the markets, that's going to eat into your time when you're selling, because that's sort of if you're working a Monday to Friday, the markets are on the weekend, so you must be cramming in the brewing a bit.
Well, lucky enough, I'm not working full time at the job. It's sort of like as and when I'm sort of in the transition period, really.
So are you sort of known in your area then and on the beer scene, or are you even under the radar really quite locally where you are?
We sort of tend to stick to Suffolk, really, and Norfolk. I mean, we got up to Norwich. We started basically in Bury St Edmunds with the council there. They've been really helpful, and we do their food and drink festivals. We do the Stone Market Food and Drink Festival. We sort of go down that route as opposed to, I mean, Essex, there's not as many markets, Maybe it's the agricultural thing in Suffolk. I don't know. I mean,
yeah, it would be a bit more rural and, like you say, probably does a few more. But Colchester itself, you say St Botolph's, which is Colchester. You've got a bit in there, haven't you? We've got sort of, there's the bottle shop, 2 Brews, and there's a few other pubs and places like that. You sort of aiming to maybe have a look at getting into that?
We have had them we've had them in a few times. In the 2 Brews have had it. The Magnet, the Hanover in Harwich. Because I was sort of doing the other job full time, it was difficult to try and fit it all in and try and push it as much as I'd like to. The sort of time constraints. Now I'm a little bit more eased up on my other work. I can probably push it a bit further now. But it's having time to do everything, really. I'd like to do online, and it's just finding the time for it all, really.
That is something we often hear from brewers. That it's just finding the time to cram it all in, especially when you're either a one-man band or, as you say, you're doing it with your wife and that. 1 minute you're a brewer, the next minute you're the accountant, next minute you're a delivery driver. Like it doesn't stop, does it?
Absolutely. No, it is constant, yeah.
We've got a couple of the beers as well that we're sort of having while we're talking. So I went for the wit beer. Was this one of the first ones you did, or when did you sort of start brewing?
That was actually. That was the very first one I did. But That's a tricky one, that, because with orange and coriander, they can be a bit unpredictable, should we say. But that was the first one I did. To be honest, I started with kits with wheat beer, and then sort of like tried to sort of do a darker version of it. A lot of people find wheat beer a bit, they either love it or hate it. It's just one of them. You get people come up to the store and you say wheat beer, no, won't touch it. And others say, oh yeah, love it. It's just one of those sort of Marmite type beers.
Well, I love a wheat beer. I think the biggest compliment I can give you is it tastes like a Belgian wheat beer. And when you have that compared to a German wheat beer, it's very different. I think of a German wheat beer, a bit sweeter, bit heavier almost, a bit fuller. I can taste the orange and the citrus, but it's quite sharp, I guess. It's not sour,
yeah,
but it's a sharper taste, isn't it? It's not really big fruity.
Right.
It's there, but it's like
because it's got bitter orange juice in there as opposed to the sweet Caraccio.
Mm-hmm.
I lived in Germany for a number of years, and I'd never heard of wheat beer before I went out there, and it was a bit of a revelation tasting it because it's such an unusual taste. And it sort of when I came back to England, I was sort of seeking out wheat beers, and there were basically only German wheat beers about.
I think the one it reminds me most of really commercial ones is Blue Moon.
Very coriandery, the Blue Moon, isn't it? Yeah.
Yours has got a bit on the end, but it's not heavy, is it, with the coriander?
No. I'd like it to be more, if I'm honest, because I do like a Blue Moon.
Do you know?
Really nice.
Do you know, I was at a gig recently, and I was, when you go to a gig, there's often not really many good beers to choose from, and so I had Blue Moon, and it's been ages since I had a Blue Moon. I had 4 or 5 pints of it. It was amazing. It's just so much better than I thought it would be. I haven't had it for years. Not bad at all, really. So if it's anything like that,
that's the Americans teaching the Belgians how to do a wheat beer. I think, isn't it? That's what it.
So, how many iterations has that beer gone through to get it to the point where it is now?
I still am, if I'm honest.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you never are satisfied with. Probably other brewers have said it. You make a beer, you drink it, and you think, right, next time I'll do a little bit less of this, a little bit more of that. Even the big brewers do it. They're constantly tweaking their bit. Normally, they're tweaking it down in alcohol volume to save on tax, but they're always sort of tweaking it somewhere along the line. And I think being self-critical, you're always trying to improve on it. That's just how that's how I look at it anyway.
And are you completely self-taught, or have you sort of gone in with other breweries along the way, any journey?
No, I've done a few courses. I've been sort of a few brewing courses and a lot of research online, and it was a lot of trial and error, and still trial and error, if I'm honest. I am just self-taught, basically. Some of them with good success and others not so great, Did you take a gourd from me, one of the gourds? Might well have done. That's proved really popular. So that's one I'm sort of sticking as one of my, regular beers now. Mm-hmm. It's a 7% one, and I only sort of brewed it just to see, what the reaction was. But it's been one of the biggest sellers I've had.
How are you finding your beer, Dave? Which one have you got?
Well, I got the Saison, and if I was blindfolded and somebody gave me this, I would know what it was straight away and what the influence is, the Belgian influence. So yeah, spot on for me. Hits all the notes.
A Saison again is another one that I don't know whether it's that well known outside the sort of brewing circles.
Well, you must see it all the time when people come up to the market stall and they probably say, what's this? What's a Saison? I've never heard of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
We throw these terms around a lot and talk about beer styles, but your man in the street probably hasn't got a clue about a lot of them.
No. I mean, I always think a Saison's a good introduction to a sour beer.
Exactly, yeah.
Because they got that sort of sour note to them. A bit of sharpness.
So will you happily sup away on crazy sour, or do you go for more traditional sours? I mean, would you have, like a mango smoothie sour, for example, from somebody and drink that?
I'd try it. I'd certainly try it. I mean, I like the sort of goose style sours, where it's more sort of traditional style. I mean, some of them fruit ones are really nice, and they sort of add a little bit extra to it as well. Things with sours, I can only probably drink one or two of them, and then my tongue's sort of saying, hang on, they're quite sort of difficult to drink a lot of.
Yeah.
And from that first trip in 2010 to Bruges, have you been back to Belgium since? And when you've gone, have you sort of now found that you like the sort of lambics and things like that a bit more?
Yeah, I mean, we've been back. Probably go 4 times a year, obviously for research purposes.
Obviously,
Where you've got to research. That's where I found this black saison. I found a black saison out there. I thought, well, that sounds quite interesting, and brewed it. And I didn't try it the first few times I was out there, and then I think I went to a beer museum, and they were sort of had a sour on tap there, and I thought, I'll try. They were giving you like a 350 ml at the end of it. I thought I'd try it, and that's one of them ones when you first try it, you're like, you sort of, your brain's saying it's beer, but your tongue's saying no, it's not beer. It's sort of like a weird. They don't fit together, but they do.
Once it all clicks into place, though, you suddenly realise, wow, this is amazing.
You do, yeah. And I think you the first sip, you're like head's a little bit scrambled by, but after a couple of sips, you're actually that's really nice. But I don't know whether the sour beer will actually take over here completely. I don't know. I don't know whether the palate's, in England for it. I'm not sure.
David, out of the two of us, you're into your sours, and I think probably actually a sour beer now isn't what it was here a few years ago. They do seem to be getting sweeter and sweeter, actually, don't they? We've said this before. We're not really getting very tart sours anymore.
It makes quite a change when you have a sour that makes you say, oh yeah, that is sour, that is really tart and sharp, because not that many of them are. There's a lot of people might be a bit scared of trying a sour, and I say, well, probably it's not going to be very sour.
No, they're full of a lot of sort of lactose and mixes now, aren't they, just to make them very, very sweet.
That's right. I think Little Earth Project does a lot of sours.
Yeah, we've had Little Earth on before, and their stuff would definitely be more closer to what you're doing with your sort of, their saison would be a tart saison, and their sort of hedgerow stuff it's not sugary sweet fruit, it's sharp, tangy fruit.
I think those fruit sours are made for a particular market, because if you just had the sort of like really tart sours, they probably wouldn't take off as much as they would do if they were like with fruit. It's the same with the when they started doing Alco Pops, they were aiming them at a certain market, to try and get traction with the younger audience. Maybe, I don't know.
We sort of talked about your brewing sort of twice a month. What's your sort of rotation like? Are you always wanting to put something new on every month, or are you sort of trying to keep a core range going and just adding to it?
Well, I've got 9 different beers at the moment. And the thing is, selling them on markets, I think there's a limit to how many you can display and talk about and sell. The 2 sort of specials I've done was an 8% and a 10%, because they are a little bit more expensive. People only buy 1 or 2 of them. So I can keep those as a sort of specials and have a sort of core range of 5 or 6. But I'll say the Black Saison, I sort of started that at the early part of this year, and that's going quite well.
I got to hold my hands up and say I'd never heard of a black saison. Had you, Dave?
Have I? Nope, never had one.
That's what you're drinking. Tell us about it.
Yeah. Again, it was research in Bruges. This is why I go there, to try and sort of find different styles of beer. We go to this it's like a bottle warehouse just outside of Bruges in Sedlagem. And, I asked the guy there what sort of, because he knows roughly what ones we had before, and he says, try this and try that. And he showed me a black saison. I thought, I've never heard of it before. And this was only sort of last September, I think it was. I thought, that's different. And it's just sort of like, you get that tartness, but you get the maltiness with it as well, so it's sort of a crossover between a sort of dark beer and a saison. And it just I don't know, it just works really well.
When it came to brewing that, how did you know what to do?
The more I looked into it, more I realised actually it's been around for quite a while. I knew it needed black malt as opposed to chocolate malt, which I use in my donkel. So it was just a case of really just getting the saison recipe I had and tweaking it to add the black malt to it to give it the darkness, but keeping the saison sort of flavour to it,
Which all sounds very simple, but I'm sure it's not.
Well, it never is. I mean, again, I've brewed it a couple of times now. I'm really enjoying it, and I'm not even sure if I want to tweak it because of the feedback I've had, even from people who come to my stall regularly. There's a particular guy in Bury St Edmunds he comes every month because we do it there once a month. He always asks him what's new, and he was well chuffed.
Have you got any others on the horizon that you want to brew?
There's an old big, I don't know how they pronounce it, it's Cute or something, Kutye, and it's a really old style of Belgian beer, which has got 50% oat. Actually, getting hold of one, not sure anyone brews it anymore. I don't know, but that's something I might look into.
I love this. So, sort of bringing back styles that people have forgotten about or never heard about, and putting your twist on them. I like that.
Thing is, as a small brewery, I suppose you've got to try and have something a little bit different. I could brew an IPA, I could brew a bitter, and it's trying to stand out in the crowd, in quite a crowded sort of environment.
Yeah.
To try and do something a little bit different, I suppose.
So you said that your partner helps with the business as well. What role does she play then?
Yeah, Lindsay, she's we call her head of sales and marketing, but she's about as good at Facebook as I am.
Okay.
And I mean, I'm useless at it. I really, this is one of my, because I've come from an industry where I don't need to do it. But she comes on the market. So she's good at sales. She's good at talk. She's sort of good at talking to people. She talks a lot more than I do. She was here now, I'd probably be sitting here listening to her talking to you and on the sidelines. So, she gets involved quite a lot.
I think it's important. Like it's important as well to have somebody else to bounce ideas off.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're right. And she does like Belgian beer as well. I think she likes the sweetness of it sometimes, Yeah, a lot of the stronger beers are quite sweet, and that sort of if she had sort of the bitter sort of style English beer, she doesn't sort of like so much. It's more the sort of sweeter styles.
So touched upon the fact that the brewery itself is something that hopefully might grow a little bit in the next few years. Have you got sort of any big hopes with what you'd like to do with it? If you could sort of if there was no pressures on your time, what would you sort of like to turn some bottles into?
I guess just full time. I'm not going to looking to make $1 million. It'd just be nice to be able to do it full time and give up my other work. To be honest, even if I kept it as a small business, I'll be quite happy with that. I think one of the problems is with brewing is you get to a certain stage and there's that next jump needs so much investment. It's a risk. If you're going to go sort of full time, you need a bigger kit, which involves more money outlay, and it's just chicken and the egg scenario. What do you sort of go for it or do you not go for it? And
we see this quite a lot.
Yeah, and they're probably all on the same page where they'd love to go that step bigger, but it's just an initial investment, I guess.
Yeah, it's not easy. We talked to a lot of breweries your sort of size actually, and a lot of them are really keen to do the tap room type of thing and then get bigger tanks and produce more beer, but it's hard, isn't it? You've got to make an investment at some point, and are you going to get a return on that investment?
Exactly, especially in the times as they are at the moment, with the cost of everything basically gone up. I mean, I don't think things have gone up as much as a lot of them would like you to believe. I've seen the cost of my malt come down, for example, when a lot of them are saying it's going up. If you go into a unit that you rent and the electricity and the power, everything is just a risk, and it's just a risk I'm not sure I'm prepared to take at the moment.
Are you brewing at home then? Have you got a space at home?
Yeah, I converted a garage and I added a big extension on the back of it. It's like a 40-foot garage, which I converted. So that keeps costs down.
Yeah.
And again, if I wanted to go bigger, then I'd have to get go and rent a unit or buy a unit or whatever, and then it's all costs involved, and
it's a whole other ball game.
It is absolutely. And I don't like the idea of being under the pressure of it. I wouldn't like to put myself in that position where I'm really under pressure to get things sort of really moving. It might be a good thing, put yourself under pressure. Who knows? I ran a business with my old industry, and in the end, the pressure of it, I just sort of didn't want it anymore.
There's always that thing where you might fall out of love with the thing that you really enjoyed in the first place.
Absolutely right. Something you enjoy and you're not under pressure to do. If you find yourself under pressure to, it's not enjoyment anymore.
I can imagine, sort of packing everything up to go to a market stall on a Saturday is quite a bit of fun and chatting to people. But if your livelihood depended on it and you've got to hit certain targets and make so much money, completely different.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're absolutely spot on. At the moment, I can go to the market quite relaxed, meet some great people, and not feel too much under pressure. It's a whole other ball game if you're actually relying on it.
And speaking of the markets, if people happen to be in the local area, I'm just sort of looking at your website now, it looks like largely the cycle doesn't change, but where can sort of people get your beers each month, basically?
Normally we're at Christchurch Park.
Which is where I found you.
Yeah, which is on the 4th weekend of the month. Berry Makers Market on the first Sunday of the month. We'll be at the Stowe Market Food and Drink Festival. We do Mark's Tay in Colchester, and we do the Norwich Global Village Market, which I think is only once this year. Normally it's twice a year. But generally, Bury St Edmunds is sort of our like favourite place to go. So I love Bury St Edmunds. It's such a great place.
If you're lucky enough to get hold of some, you will enjoy it. I've enjoyed mine. Did you enjoy yours, Dave?
Yeah, it's all gone.
I'm looking forward to trying the other ones. It's also worth pointing out, actually, if people are able to get hold of them, the pricing's great. I think I got, what was it, 5 for 20, 5 for 25, and one beer was free, something along those lines.
You got more than that. You got 8 for 20, and you got one free.
There we go.
Although that pricing is going to change soon, unfortunately. I've kept it that price for so long, and I keep thinking I've got to put it up. But obviously, everyone's in the same. Everyone's in the same boat where money's sort of a little bit tighter than it was.
By the sounds of it, I think there's room to manoeuvre there with the price. I think you can go up a little bit.
Well, yeah, I do think we are a little bit too cheap. We did, you know what? When we first started, we kept it that price since 2017. And when we first started, people going, "Well, you're very expensive."
Really?
We are, but and now people are saying you're very cheap. It's sort of gone the other way,
Yeah, you've got to strike the right balance. But you don't want people thinking you're too cheap.
The thing is, I'm still making money at that price.
Yeah.
But it's just, sometimes you've got to weigh up your time and your effort. And,
I think there's definitely room for wiggle room, considering I lost half the beers in my head there because I haven't touched them because I've been waiting to talk to you. So I think you can easily afford to charge a bit more and people will buy them because it's definitely worth the price.
It won't be a lot more. I think we're looking at $2.95 a bottle as opposed to $2.75. It's just,
I think that sounds like a bargain, $2.95 still. I would. I'll definitely be seeking some more out of your collection, Dave.
Well, that, or I'll just go to one of the markets and I'll get hold of some for you and get them sent up. So there's always ways and means.
Well, Alan, thank you very much for joining us. We've all enjoyed your beers. You've had a beer and told us all about it. And we know a lot more about St Botolph's than we did before. So, thank you very much indeed. And, we hope to see more of you.
Great. Thanks for having me on.
Not a problem.
Lovely. Thank you very much indeed.
Daftaboutcraft.
I keep finding these breweries now which are close by. And I do have some beers for you, Dave, but our beer transportation system's been a little bit slow of late. We haven't actually been buying much beer, which is a different point. But anyway, Burwell Brewery, which are near where I work, are doing similar things in terms of the styles are quite traditional, but they've been going a little while. They very kindly got in touch. Now, you'll hear from Ricky Dolphin, who clearly has the best name in brewing.
If he doesn't do a mobile disco, he needs to with that name.
Exactly. So it's such a good name, isn't it? And he'll explain a bit about all of the beers. But I do have Stefan's Mule, which is the wheat beer which they make. And I did just think it fitted in well with given what we said with Alan from St Botolph's. So this is a Burwellian wheat beer, 5%. And you know me, I do like a good wheat beer.
It's that nice golden colour in the glass there.
Now, it's not full-on German, because it's not quite got that banana-y sweetness, but it does have the fullness of a wheat. It is nice. The lack of the sweetness actually, in a way, almost makes it slightly more drinkable. You know, when you have a wheat beer, they can be a bit creamy, can't they? And be quite filling. Like, you have two or three, and you're like, this doesn't do that.
We said they're traditional in their roots again. Is this a modern take, do you think, or a standard traditional take on that style of beer?
It's quite traditional, as Ricky explains. They like traditional stuff. They're a nano brewery. They've been going since 2019, but you're not going to find any sort of big funny imperial stouts with all the adjuncts or pale ales with all the hops chucked in. They do sort of have their roots in the real ale things, and that's what they like to do. They don't filter or pasteurize, do anything with that. So it is a traditional approach.
Yeah, it's interesting when you get breweries that have started up in the last few years and they've decided to take the traditional route because obviously we live in 2024 now, not hundreds of years ago or whatever. But it's interesting how breweries can still start now and want to pursue those old styles and more traditional ways.
And it does seem to be our theme of 2024 so far, doesn't it? But we're finding these breweries, and as I said on the last episode when I was chatting to our friends at Artifact about it and Ampersand, and they agreed that this now seems to be what brewers are more interested in doing, because brewing a pale ale is relatively easy, but brewing these styles based on recipes that are hundreds of years old and making them taste either the same or better is a skill, and it's more of a craft. So I think we will see more of this. But Stefan's Mule is a very nice wheat beer. I've got no complaints about this. It's the kind of beer that you would have on cask at a beer festival, and it would knock you on the backside after about 4, because you'd think, oh, this is lovely. And I bet it's one of those where the fresh air sniper could easily get you.
Oh, the fresh air sniper. Know it well. Well, while you're drinking that, let's hand over to Ricky, and he can tell us some more about the brewery.
I'm Ricky Dolphin, and I think I live every man's dream. I have a brewery in my back garden. Together with Paul Belton, I founded Burwell Brewery in 2016. When I say founded, it's a hobby, and that hobby just grew until it was out of control. Paul and I met whilst we were at a men's Keep Fat at our local sports centre. Well, we called it Keep Fat because we spent way longer in the bar afterwards undoing all the good work that we'd done, and it's there that we discovered we were both passionate about beer. I was a home brewer with, I think, about 15 years' experience at the time, and Paul was a chemist by training, so together it was really a match made in heaven. So we started brewing together in our greenhouse, and then we used to run beer evenings for the community sports centre in order to raise money. I'd wax lyrical about why Robin Hood's men were merry and the difference between ordinary, best and special, whilst our audience savoured examples of all of the beers. We also provided barrels of our homebrew for sampling, and eventually got fed up of people asking us if they could buy our beer, so we thought it'd be a great idea to get a commercial licence so we could oblige them. Of course, it wasn't quite as simple as that, but that's another story. Well, Burwell Brewery was born, and today we're a 2.5 barrel brewery, which is a way really to make a small loss from a large investment. We don't really brew to make money, we just brew for the fun of sharing our passion, and that really leads me on to our beers. We just brew the beers that we like. We don't brew any lagers or sours or anything tasting of tropical fruit juice or an ice cream sundae with a 99 flake in it. We are, down the line, traditional real ale brewers, and we're proud of that. It's not that everything we brew is traditional British beer styles, but they are traditional styles. We brew a Bavarian Weiss beer, according to the Reinhardtsgebot, a Belgian wit beer, which uses the same base, but orange and coriander are added into the conditioning tank, and a Rauch beer. That's a German beer with smoked malt, and it's great with cheese and cold meats. Our British range of ales includes a pale ale called Burwell Sunshine, a deceptively easy drinking ale for 5%, and Margaret's-Field, a 4% amber ale made with Citra hops. Then, following the tradition of multiple strengths of beer to suit your taste and pocket, we've created a range of classic English bitter. The core bitter is Befuddled, a classic 4% best bitter with a traditional combination of Fuggles and Goldings hops, which we also do in its lighter quaffing version during the summer, which is called Slightly Befuddled. It's 3.5%, and you can get that one at the Cambridge Beer Festival this year. We then do Double Befuddled, a 5.5% richer and stronger version of Befuddled, and, during the colder months, Absolutely Befuddled, which at 6.5% is more akin to a Belgian beer, full-bodied, rich biscuit malt in the mouth, and a satisfying bitter finish. For those of you wondering how we name our beers, let me explain. We just sit down with the beer with friends and we drink it and we all throw out names. If we finish the glass and we haven't got a name, we just repeat it until finally we get a name we all agree on, or we'll have to start again the following evening. So on the darker side, we have a brown ale called Oldcastle Brown, named after the castle in Burwell, which we brew because Newcastle Brown was my first foray away from lager when I was in my early 20s, and because brown ales have all but disappeared on tap. And in fact, they make really flavoursome lower alcohol beers. It's nutty with caramel notes and a very gentle finish. At 3.2%, it makes a perfect lunchtime drink. And then we have porter, a Judy's Hole. I should at this point, lest anyone should think otherwise, make it clear that all our beers are named after places in Burwell. That's except for Befuggled, which was just too good a name to pass up. Judy's Hole is a pit full of water where locals in the area swam, and the swimming hole was named after a lady called Judy Finch, who had a reputation as either a wise woman or a witch, depending on your viewpoint. Judy's Hole is used as the base for our two other beers. That's Judy's Hole Winter Ale, a 6.5% version, which we produce again only in the colder months. And then our last beer, which is only produced at Christmas, is Red House Milk Stout. It takes its base from the winter ale, but then we add lactose and then fortify it with bourbon, cocoa nibs, Madagascar vanilla pods, and age it in oak barrels. For those of you who want to know more about us, then I suggest you have a look at burwellbrewery.com, where we have an online shop, and you'll also find out about the brewery that we built ourselves, with little or no building experience, but that never stopped us. And we also can be regularly found at the Burwell Farmers Market, which meets in Mandeville Hall on the second Saturday of the month. And our beers are for sale regularly at the Star at Lidgate and Toft Social Club. We also make guest appearances at other local pubs, and we do have our beers on sale at most of the local beer festivals. So from Paul and myself, Ricky, have a great time. Cheers.
Well, a sort of fascinating insight there. Really, really interesting to hear all about Burwell. And how's that developed in your glass day as we've been listening there? Has it gone down more?
I've drunk more of it. It's not changed, but I wouldn't expect it to. It doesn't have that sweet top of a real German hef, but equally I've had other breweries in Britain doing a wheat beer, and when they do them, they can be a bit not bitter, but they lack a bit of depth and they lack a bit of any sort of real characteristic. This one's characteristic is just lovely and full and drinkable. There's not sort of different things to tell you about with what's going on with the hops. It's a really nicely made wheat beer, and it's a traditionally made wheat beer, as I say. If you want a German Hefeweiss, don't expect that. But if you want a really nice wheat beer, you will be pleased.
It is favourite beer time now. What have we been enjoying drinking since our last episode? What have you been enjoying drinking, Dave? On your travels, no less.
Yeah, we managed to actually go away for a few days. Not quite as many days as we hoped. We did have to cut it short because one of us didn't like sleeping in their travel cot, and it wasn't me when I was put in there after having too many. But even so, in the time that we did spend up in Derbyshire, we did manage to see some nice things and also drink some nice beers. We went to Buxton, and in Buxton I went to Buxton Brew Tap. We've got quite a range now, Buxton, and I'm sure people know that Buxton has been in the news for being in a bit of financial bother. And I can kind of see why. It sounds so mean, but I was not bowled over by any of the beers I had. They've got the range which covers everything from pale to stout and everything in between, and yet none of it stood out. I didn't have all of it, obviously, but the ones I had didn't do much.
When I first got into craft beer, I remember putting an order in with Buxton and absolutely loving their beers.
Well, the Buxton Omnipollo beers from years gone by, they were incredible. They were sort of real eye-opening beers to what could be done in craft beer. Unfortunately, it doesn't quite feel like that's carried on. So we went there. Then within Buxton, there is a craft bar called Seasons. Very, very friendly. Lovely range of beers. That was enjoyable. I did want to go to the Red Willow place in Buxton. I stuck my head in the door, and unfortunately they didn't do any food. And I said, I'll come back and raise your fridge. And then one thing led to another, and I didn't. So that was a bit of a shame.
But did you have any beers you really enjoyed, though?
I did. I am building up to it slowly. Thornbridge went there. I mean, crikey, I went there probably 8-9 years ago, and what a difference that place is now. That is serious industry, isn't it?
Yeah, it's massive, isn't it? Vast space they occupy.
Yeah, huge place, considering what it was. The tap room is very impressive, actually. And the hef I had there, which is called hef, the Hefeweizen hef, very impressed. Very good hef. But it's not the beer that I enjoyed the most when I was away. That goes to previous Brew to Me Brewers 2x2. Snake Eyes, a beer I have had before, but I haven't had on cask. And I had it in the Joiners Arms, which is the micro pub in Bakewell. Ever such friendly staff, lovely little place. You can sit outside or inside. It's a brilliant micro pub. And anyway, went in one day and they didn't have an amazing range, and I was a bit disappointed. Went in a couple of days later and they put this on. Oh, goodness me. When we talk about there's craft beers going in kegs, in cask rather, and how much different it tastes. Oh, this was lovely. It was so smooth, it was so yellow, it was so soft. It was just a lovely experience.
We've both had Snake Eyes before in can from Andy at Hydrology, because he's always talked favourably about 2x2 and both really enjoyed it. But I think I remember him saying in the past, you should have it on cask because it's awesome. Just goes to show what modern cask can be like.
Yeah, the can was good, but this was great. So that's my tried and tested for my trip away. Snake Eyes by 2x2. What about yourself? What have you been enjoying?
Excellent. Well, I made a little trip to the Bailey Head in Oswestry over the bank holiday weekend just gone. When I got there, I realised that they were showcasing 3 beers, the first 3 beers from a brand new brewery called Silent Brew. Then it all clicked into place because Silent Brew, the brewery that I mentioned on the last episode, who were getting a bit of stick for their artwork because it was AI generated. And it was my rant of the episode, wasn't it?
It was.
And the artwork looked fantastic. Yeah, it was AI generated. Who cares? What I was really interested in was the beer. And they'd got 3 beers on tap from this brand new brewery, and I had all 3. And they were all really, really impressive. The one I enjoyed the most was called Cocoa Utopia. Billed as a luscious and indulgent stout that delivers on the promise of chocolate fudge goodness. Now, you know when they say things like that, you think you're setting yourself up for a fall here because it's not going to live up to the billing. It was the last drink I had in the pub, and I could still taste that fudginess in my mouth about half an hour later. Absolutely nailed it.
Well, that's the key, isn't it? It's that, as we always say, it's got to taste like what you say it's going to taste like. So chocolate, yeah, that's easy, but is there going to be fudge?
And for an extra bit of insight into our visit, my mum was with us. She never likes to drink beer. She always says it's too beery. So I said, go on, try this. She goes, oh, I'll have a smell of it. I'll smell it. She goes, oh, that smells chocolatey and fudgy. And I hadn't told her what it was. She got it straight away. That is really testament to Silent Brew Co, I think. That's
impressive. That sounds like the kind of thing I'd run past Katie, because a lot of beer just smells like beer to her. So if she could pick out things like that, that's very encouraging. Yeah. Ironically, I was a week too early because they had all those beers in seasons in Buxton as well, because they're based in Buxton, Silent Brew.
That's right.
But I was a week too early. Otherwise, they'd have all been on tap for me to enjoy as well. But there we go.
They got their beers into about 15 different pubs for their launch. And very, very impressed. If they're anything to go by, they're going to be really good. And hopefully, we've already reached out to them. Hopefully at some point we'll get them on the podcast to talk more.
We have tried, haven't we? So fingers crossed. Perhaps if they hear this or someone gives them a nudge, you're very welcome to come on.
Now, we talked about my rant there, which we did on the last episode. I've got another one, Dave. Can I do a top rants?
Go for it.
Not just breweries. Any company that does this should be unfollowed on Facebook. Stop tagging me in to posts with @followers. I hate that. Have you seen this? So they'll do @followers, and then you get an alert on your phone that you've been tagged into something. But it's not you that's been tagged in, it's the whole of their audience, all of their followers.
I think I know what you mean. I'm not sure I've been subjected to it that much. That possibly is because I either don't follow quite as many as you, or I might have different settings. But I'm aware of the phenomenon, but I don't know that it's been...
Well, you've got off lightly then. I'm going to have to look at my settings because, you'll think, oh, look, somebody's tagged me into something. This will be interesting. And you click onto it, and I've been tagged, but so has 3,000 other people, so it's not relevant to me at all. And it just makes me think, I don't want to follow you if you're going to keep doing this all the time. If I want to see your posts, I'll find them. Don't tag me in, especially to see them. Very, very annoying.
Daftaboutcraft.
Well, regular listeners will know that The Brewer's Wife is a feature we have usually on every episode of Daftaboutcraft, but she wasn't here on the last episode. And The Brewer's Wife is Sam from the Copper Beach Brewing Company in Worcestershire. She is here today. How are you doing, Sam?
I'm here. How am I doing? I don't know how to answer that question.
Well, why weren't you here last time? Why have you got another sick note?
Well, just like my absence from the episode before that even, I just, plagued with illness again. You know, because your keen listeners will know that this isn't my usual voice.
It does. You do sound a bit under the weather still.
I'm very hoarse, I am actually well within myself. I'm just, for some reason, got a bit of a sore throat and a cough, and then I'm full of conjunctivitis, courtesy of my 2-year-old. So, I thought I would just give your listeners a bit of an insight into what it has been like in the Copper Beech household for the sort of first part of the year.
Anybody else, you just think, I'm a bit under the weather, I'll have a couple of days in bed, won't go to work or whatever, I'll be better soon. But when you're both running your own business and you've got a 2-year-old who wants your attention all the time, it's not as easy as all that, is it?
No, it's really, really not. And I think the luxury of that you don't even realise that you have when you are employed with sick pay and you don't have children or young children in your care, that you can literally just, like you say, take that time to recover. And we all know when you are ill, the best way to and the quickest way to recover is to rest. And so this year's been a real challenge with obviously Delilah starting nursery because they are just literal germ
havens.
They are just child after child going in with all lovely plethora of bacterias. But we did have a little bit of an unusual occurrence with illness that was actually nothing to do with Delilah.
Well, we should just say that it's not just you that's been ill, Dan has been ill as well.
So that's what I mean by the unusual occurrence. So if we go back to the start of the year, obviously it came in with a real kind of like can-do attitude. You know what it's like when you start a new year and you feel like really motivated and you come up with all these plans and everything. So Dan and I had this planning meeting and we'd sat down and we'd said, right, on this day, this is going to happen and we're going to do this, that and the other. We're going to start these new features and we're really going to kind of like give it our all. And then Dan on the brewery side, so he was like, I need to brew X amount of times and all of this kind of stuff. And it was really all going to kind of start from early April when Delilah did start nursery, that we would have a kind of a little bit more time to play with, particularly Dan. But she had a bit of a temperature, a bit of a virusy type thing, nothing major. But lo and behold, three days later, I came down with it. And then, like you say, I'm also self-employed. So my income is really the only secure income in a way. So if I don't go to work, we lose that completely. So I do battle through potentially when I shouldn't, just for fear of not being able to pay my mortgage.
People might think, oh, well, Dan runs a brewery, why is there no income there? But it's so precarious. I
think really, if you think about it, Copper Beech is still in its infancy. I don't really know how long that term stretches, but I think the first 4 years, only 2 years of trading to the public, that is still quite young and you're still growing it. So the answer to that really is that any money that comes in stays in and it goes towards growth. And we've just kind of had to learn to survive without his income. You know, we've done all right so far. It's getting a little bit tighter, but, you know, I sort of carried on and went to work probably when I shouldn't have done. Took me longer to recover. But in the meantime, then Dan inevitably was like, oh, I'm starting to come down with it now. So it was kind of a bit of a domino effect. We all fell one by one. Started to come out the other side of it. And then Dan started to come out the other side of it. But then about 48 hours later said, I don't feel very well again. At this point, I'm quite unsympathetic, I think. And I'm like, oh, just get on with it. You know, it's like, we've all had it. We're fine. What's wrong with you? And he says, no, I really don't feel very well. I think I've got a bit of a temperature. So that was him out for a couple of days.
And what did he have?
Well, for a couple of days, he just had a rotten fever and really nasty viral symptoms. But then I did come home from work one evening and he said, I've come out in this rash now. And he had this funny rash and he'd only noticed it on his elbows and it was very sort of strange looking. And then I said, well, is it anywhere else? And of course he sort of had an explore and then his legs were absolutely covered in these little red pinpricks. And I said, I don't like the look of that. Let's give 111 a call, because it wasn't, I don't know if you've ever heard of a non-blanching rash. Well, you will, because you've got kids. But basically the glass test, does it fade under a glass? No, it didn't. So I said, because he's been ill, and let's call 111. Anyway, they said, just go and see your GP tomorrow. You know, it's nothing life-threatening overnight. And they were asking all these questions about what did the rash look like. And she said, do any of the spots look like blisters? And I said, oh yeah, actually there's a couple on his elbow that look a bit like chicken pox. But obviously Dan had chickenpox as a child, so I didn't think in a million years that was going to be what it was.
He's a rare breed, though, isn't he, Dan?
Yes, that is rare is definitely the word. But yeah, he went to the GP the next morning and the GP took one look at him and said, "You've got chickenpox." So what 38-year-old man just randomly out of the blue gets chickenpox for the second time?
When they've already, that's rare enough, but when they've already had it as a kid.
Yes. So it was just like, of course you've got chickenpox. Of course that means you can't now do anything for 5 days because it's so contagious within that kind of period of time. Yeah. So that really, I think, again, listening to it, you might think 5 days, that's not that bad. You can claw that back. But it was 5 days before, was it Manchester?
This was in the lead up to Manchester Craft Brew Fest.
So I think his first non-contagious day was the day before Manchester Craft Brew Fest.
Yeah.
So he had missed all of his prep time for that event. So he went straight into that, plus all the other things that need to be done around that. And I genuinely still, to this day, I'm not sure how he pulled off that event.
I think if I'm right, I think he was canning the beer. He did a collab with the Craft Brew Festival people. And I think he was canning that the day before. That day before we went. So the first day he was feeling better.
That's about right, because he wouldn't have been able to do it before that.
Illness just has a knock-on effects, and one thing affects another and another and another, and it's so easy to then get behind.
The problem is you never actually really catch up.
Yeah.
Because inevitably then, nothing goes 100% to plan either. So you're on the back foot because you've missed 5 days of work. Then you go to do something else and there'll be a problem there that you've not foreseen, so that delays that again. So actually here we are, it must be 7-8 weeks since his recovery. And in that 7-8 weeks, I've had maybe 3 illnesses, one which absolutely had me bedridden, which was why I wasn't here last episode. It just means that you're always constantly chasing your tail, trying to catch up. And it's just always coming back to the fact that when you're a one-man band, essentially, there's certain jobs that only he can do. Basically, I'm sitting here now 8 weeks later and everything's in a bit of a mess.
You've had a lot of events recently, and the beer that had been canned and kegged has taken a real hammering, so stocks are low.
We've got nothing, and obviously that's great because the events that we've done so far have all gone really well and we've sold a lot of beer, which is fantastic. But yeah, we've got all these events coming up.
The tanks are now full though, aren't they, and ready to be...
So all 3 are full, 2 are in fermentation, Birdie's obviously ready to come out. It's just a constant juggling act.
It is. As consumers, we buy the beer from a web shop or a shop, we drink it. We never think about all these things that go on behind the scenes.
Well, because why would you, I suppose? There's no way of knowing. No. And I'm sure some brewers are having a lovely smooth ride and they don't have these sorts of problems.
I bet there's a lot of brewers listening to this just nodding their head thinking, yeah, I've been there, I know all about this, I know what it's like. It's a constant struggle, really, isn't it? It
is. But, the only choice you have is to keep going.
Yeah, crack on.
Even on the days where you just really want to give up and curl into a ball and cry and say, oh, I can't do this anymore. The only choice is to push on. So, yeah, you just have to kind of try and weave in those nice things amongst all the chaos and remember that actually you've got a hell of a lot to be grateful for.
Well, hopefully we'll see you back on the next episode.
Fingers crossed.
Get in touch with us on Twitter and Instagram at Daftaboutcraft1.
Well, thanks a lot, Sam, and that's just about it for this episode of Daft About Craft. We will be back in the last week of June with episode 62, but in the meantime, if you want to get in touch with us, our email address is daftaboutcraft1@gmail.com, and you can find us on X, Facebook and Instagram at daftaboutcraft1. From myself, Dave D, and Dave B, we'll see you soon.
Daft About Craft, the craft beer podcast.